Hello everyone, how's it going? It's your host and conductor on this wild ride. It is me, Demetrius. Glad you all are on board, and I hope you all enjoyed that last video that we just put out on the Alaska Railroad. That Anchorage to Seaward tour train, that's just a beautiful thing. I mean, that's always one trip I've always wanted to take in my entire lifetime.
Hello everyone, how's
and
it going? It's your host and
I probably shouldn't be putting my thing on here. There you are. Don't want to have echo over there, but my dad used to work for Royal Caribbean, and they used to have excursions, so they still do. That you'll be able to take a cruise train up to Alaska, well, a cruise ship up to Alaska, and then a cruise train through Alaska. So I mean, that's a beautiful thing, and that's one of the top 5 states I've always wanted to go to. Alaska, and probably Montana and Idaho are another one that I've always wanted to go to. I'm more of a mountains guy. I've never been a beach guy, even though I've lived and been born and raised in Miami my entire life. I've always liked the mountains and more of a scenic, pastoral landscape, that sort of thing. Hello, everyone. Howdy. How's it going, Tree Trooper? Adam. Glad you enjoyed it. Hello, Renell. And I'll get you that song you were looking for as well. I'll try to find it on Monday. I know I have it on a hard disk drive somewhere. Alright, yeah, glad to have something, especially now because Indianapolis has just closed down its bars and restaurants again. Told everybody to shut down as we have the coof rising up again. I'm telling you guys, this is the second wave. We probably will have a third one too, so don't panic too much. But we have a lot of good news here. But yeah, I mean, the Alaska Railway is just one of the most interesting railroads in America because it's still one of the only ones that does both passenger and freight railroad operations. And this was something that started back in the turn of the 19th to 20th century. You had people like the Guggenheims and J.P. Morgan who were basically trying to do private railways to go ahead and extract as many resources and minerals out of Alaska as they could with the gold panning craze that was going on. Which, by the way, I got a good cider today, which it's pretty good. Gold Rush. It's actually brewed over here in Indiana by a place called New Day Brewery. I've had it before, but let's go ahead and crack this open and explain a little bit about the Alaska Railroad. That's good. It's pretty bitter, but that's good. That's real cider. Hard cider. But yeah, the Alaska Railroad. So, a lot of Alaskans were ticked off when the Guggenheims and J.P. Morgan were basically building these private railways just to extract a whole bunch of copper, a bunch of fish, gold, timber. They basically churned it into a monopoly over in Alaska, which they call the Alaska Syndicate. I mean, ships, fish, coal, timber, they had the monopoly on the market on everything. So, a bunch of native Alaskans and whatnot. When I say native, I mean, the Americans that moved there and call Alaska home. That's what I mean by native. I'm not talking about, the Native Americans in that type of sense, or whatever we're calling them now, the indigenous people or whatnot. I'm a 90s kid, so we've always called them the Indians. I mean, not the Indians like that live in India. It's, the whole story about that is a whole different thing. But back into the Alaska Railroad. So they sent a delegate to Congress. Teddy Roosevelt got it rescinded that they broke down that monopoly, and then the U.S. Army started building the Alaska Railroad due to Congress putting up what was called, I think, like the Home Rule or something like that by Howard Taft. I remember watching this in documentary, doing some research on the Alaska Railroad because I thought it was interesting in a way that, how can government do something right? So after they finished building the Panama Canal, they brought up all the equipment from the Panama Canal up to Alaska to start building the Alaska Railroad, and I believe they started at around 1913 or something like that, and it wasn't around 1923 when Warren Harding got over there and put the last golden spike on there, hence Gold Rush, get the spike on there. This is actually a spike that I have here from old railroad in Indiana, over by Rensselaer, where Amtrak goes by. So pretty. No, I did not take it off of there. It was an old spike. So no, if a train derails, it's not my fault. This is an old spike that they just threw out. Old rusty spikes. You can't have them on there. But anyway, it was part of the federal government. The FRA had it in 1967, and then the Alaska State bought the railway in 1985. So now Alaska owns the railway, and it's been like that ever since. And as somebody else pointed it out, yes, it's one of the only railways still in the United States that you can actually just stand on the sideways and you can just flag it down. By flag railways, it means that if you're standing on the sideways, basically like hitching a ride, you're going ahead, you're flagging it down, the the rail car will stop, the train set will stop, and you can be able to hitch a ride on there. As long as you pay the price, you're good. But I mean, it is just incredible. And not only that, the crazy thing about Alaska is that it's just such a varied landscape, and the amount of dredging and building through mountains. They had to go ahead and excavate I don't know how many miles of tunnels through there, and bridges, because they had a crap ton of bridges that even after they finished up building the railway, they had to go ahead and rebuild it again. It was basically a whole bunch of army colonels, one of them being of course good old Colonel Frederick Mears of the cavalry, that basically went ahead and fixed up Alaska, got it rebuilt, and got it going. So yeah, that's the U.S. Army for you. That's the only way you can get it right, was when the Army Corps of Engineers goes ahead and builds something. I mean, they can get they used to get airstrips in Guadalcanal done in a week. It's insane. Meanwhile, California can barely build the the high-speed rail line and the flat part of the Central Valley. Yeah, a good point. There's actually some parts, Stalking Horse, where you can see Russia from Alaska. So, I mean, yeah, the Alaskan Railway was 7 times the cost of America buying the territory of Alaska from Russia. Just imagine that. That's how expensive it was. But, I mean, it's been worth it to the Alaskans. Absolutely. I know some people have been talking about A2A, which is that means the Alaska to Alberta line. I don't know how much that would actually cost, but, I mean, from just hearing about it, there's a lot you have to go ahead to actually say that that's a viable business proposal, or even a government proposal to go ahead and do that. Is how much ridership are you going to get out in that region, especially to Canada? Unless we annex Canada, I mean, heck, that'll make it a lot easier for Alaskans to go ahead and get postal. That will help a lot. So let's go ahead and dive into here. We got the Los Angeles to Las Vegas high-speed train winning their bond, finally, the allocation. That is just incredible now. So if you guys have heard about Express West, that's been going on for the last better part of the decade. But Brightline, now on the Virgin Trains USA, under Richard Branson's company, went ahead and bought up the project. So now they'll be going ahead and building from Las Vegas to Victorville, the Express West project. But they just won this week. They were able to win the bond allocation from Las Vegas. So that's going to be crazy. So look at this. Express West, a high-speed rail line that will connect Southern California to Las Vegas, won $200 million in private activity bonds, or PABs, from Nevada, a critical final public allocation that allows the company owned by Wall Street investor Wes Edens to raise an additional $800 million for the project. So that is a massive, massive win, and probably the best news of this week. This is just incredible, okay? So a private company, again, they started out, FEC started out by having its own rail lines, and they went ahead and said, let's bring back passenger rail services onto here. We already own it. We'll go ahead and upgrade it. It'll also help our freight railroad, but it'll also be able to, have additional revenue, even though Brightline is technically a separate company from the FEC. But not only provide a service, but also make profit, and also, be able to make money and revenue from the real estate as well from it. Because you have to have, both real estate investments into the area as well. Very much like Japan has and Tokyo has. A lot of the money that the companies make over in Asia, a lot of it is from the real estate. Because you have the stations, you also have mixed-use development, and transit-oriented development. That brings in a lot more, and they become more than just train stations. They become more like community centers. And I don't mean like community centers, the boring community centers that the government makes. I mean like real community centers. Yeah, that's the only problem, I think, Stalking Horse, is, how are you going to get people to go ahead and get to, drive all the way from Las Vegas to Victorville to then hop on a train, because by that point you're just going to drive all the way to Las Vegas. I agree, but they are looking to make a connection to Palmdale that will also connect to the metro system in Las Vegas. And maybe they'll get more people on. I do think they need to go ahead and just push all the way to Las Vegas, but never know. Then again, California should have started from Los Angeles over to San Diego. I'll never let that go. I'll be an old man with a cane, and I'll never let that go. But this is also good. The Nevada State Board of Finance approval for the project, a unit of Eden's Florida-based Brightline service, comes after California awarded $600 million as well, private activity bonds. So that's a total of $800 million in private activity bonds. That's nearly $1 billion. And then another $800 million more. So we're talking about $1.6 billion in financing for this major project. And that's going to be full high-speed rail. This is not, they're not going to be putting higher speed rail diesels. They're going to go the full high speed rail, at least 150 miles an hour, if not 200. That's going to be incredible. And again, we'll be out of this COOF timeline at some point. We're not going back to the regular normal. We'll go to a new normal, whatever it is. Hopefully it's not garbage or anything like that, because the old normal wasn't that normal. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean Las Vegas. I meant Los Angeles. I messed up on that one. But yeah, this is pretty good. The express line will be built near the Interstate 15 and operate electric trains traveling speeds up to 200 miles an hour. That's there we go. To move people between Southern California and Las Vegas in 85 minutes. Construction is to start late this year, and the company estimates it will attract 10 million riders annually. So 10 million riders, that is insane. Large-scale construction projects are a critical piece of rebuilding our economy, and private activity bonds are a perfect mechanism to incentivize the private sector to deliver public benefits, says Sarah Watterson, Chief Development Officer for Express West. So again, we have a broken economy right now, okay? I've been saying it for a long time. We've never gotten out of the recession, and we're probably at depression at this point. How we get ourselves out, not the same way that FDR did, which is, going ahead and spending, till we have no money left. Because at this point, I probably the boomers still think that money grows on trees, and the deficit will never pop at this point, and we'll just be left with the bill. But there's a way that it can be balanced. There's a way that both government and private companies can be able to work together. Okay, and I've been thinking about that as well. It's like, how do we get politicians to focus on what we need to do? And it's really just putting out more of these videos, going ahead and informing people, letting people know what's going on. So if they by any chance become politicians, or they have connections to politicians or other people, because that's the thing, politicians are always going to go with the flow. So if we can control the flow, in a sense, we can help to at least control that in a sense. Again, we know there's a lot of oligarchs in power, and the money really talks, but what's the best way to make money is, to go ahead and make people buy stuff. And what do people want to buy? If we can tell them, well, they want to get on trains, that's one way to change the market. But that's a whole different story. You're right, Darius, about what happened after the 1918 flu pandemic, but that was a whole different world back then. I would say that was a world that made a little bit more sense. Even though it was very nightmarish after World War I, probably the worst war that soldiers have ever had to fight, coming up with a new age of warfare. That's just, nightmarish in a sense. But people were still grounded. Let's put it that way. People were still grounded and still had some sort of values of what civilization meant. Again, private activity bonds created by federal government for high-cost infrastructure projects are tax-exempt but do not use public funds. And again, that's people got to understand. Okay, a lot of these projects aren't taxpayer-funded. However, these bonds are a way to be able to circumvent a lot of the regulation that would normally be disincentivizing in the private sector. So it will allow for a lot more bonds and a lot more allocation to be able to fund these projects and get them done in a timely manner. That's really the reason why private activity bonds exist. In a sense, it's kind of like a P3 project, a private-public partnership. But again, you still have a private company that's still operating and constructing this project. You don't have the government constructing it and then going ahead and just, doling it out to private companies to go ahead and build this or whatnot. And then these private companies, since they're on the government dole, they can go ahead and set the prices as high as they want to. That's usually how it works. I know somebody mentioned this as well. I believe it was Askshar. The Pikes Peak Cog Railway. So I know we don't talk a lot about the smaller railways, especially some of the more railways that are for tourists. But this is pretty interesting, I think. So Pikes Peak in Colorado has a cog railway that's being revamped, and $100 million in renovation to the track, cogs, and rail cars and depot. So that's something that's going to be opening up hopefully by May of 2021.
The highest railroad in America is undergoing a $100 million renovation from the roadbed to the tracks, cogs, rail cars, and depot. Once the renovations are complete, visitors will get to go up the 9-mile ride from Manitou Springs to the Pikes Peak summit.
Yeah, that's going to be insane. I've always wanted to go to Colorado. And again, I love the mountains. So there we go. Where will the Las Vegas rail station be located? That's a good question. I think it's going to be... let's go ahead and look that up right now. Express West. I don't know if they actually... I know it's going to be in Las Vegas. It's not going to be on the outskirts of Las Vegas. I know they're really going for getting in the city center in Las Vegas. Let's see if we get a fact sheet. This needs a little bit more research into this. That's another thing I've had on the back burner as well, is doing a whole video on Express West to go ahead and explain more about the project, especially to people who are new to the channel. And that's how we bring a lot of new people to the channel. We used to do videos on what was back then All Aboard Florida, and we did on Texas Central and what is California High-Speed Rail. It not only introduces people to the concept of high-speed rail, but also to what these projects are and what they mean to both themselves and the economy and to the infrastructure as a whole in America. So that's what we really need to look at. Where did my pencil go? That's another good question I need to answer so I can be writing these down. Thank you, Akshar, for bringing this up, because this is a good thing to look at. Again, the smaller companies and smaller projects need some love too.
Closed for 3 years, the Manitou and Pikes Peak Cog Railway is...
I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Pikes Peak rally, but that's also something I've always wanted to see. It's a dirt rally that happens annually. Perfect. So here we are. Bombardier Transport has, he's got it. So corner of Warm Springs Road and Las Vegas Boulevard. Let's actually look that up where that is. Let me see. Warm Springs Road, Las Vegas Boulevard. Okay, I don't know why it's keeping bringing up Bing, but let me go ahead and put it. Somebody asked me the other day what keyboard am I using. It's Razer or Nada. I like more of the mechanical keyboards, but I just got a good deal on this one, so that's why I'm using it. Alright, here we are. Alright. So here's where it is, right over here. Let's go get a satellite image of this. So it's right on I-15. And it's basically, yeah, it's right there in Vegas. Yeah. It's right there by the airport. Right near the strip, right as well. There's a strip right over here. I've never been to Las Vegas, so I'm not too familiar with the area. But thanks to Google, we have that here. Look at that. Yeah, there's a whole entire plot of land here. This is perfect. And it's right there by I-15 and everything. Right by the airport. Yeah. That's pretty perfect. Alright. So let me go set this back up and let's go Where did my stream go? Alright. Give me a second here, guys. I think I lost the stream somewhere. There's my dashboard. Alrighty. Yeah, it is prime real estate. Will Express West connect to the monorail along the strip? I'm not quite sure. I don't even know where the monorail is exactly on the strip. But I know that if you can be able to continue on the right-of-way, it probably should be able to connect there. Again, that's going to take a whole entire video to go ahead and look at. I need to go ahead and refresh myself on Express West because that's something that I haven't really looked into that much since it was a project that was on the back burner. Now that it's really starting to gain a lot of steam, it's definitely a project that is for real, and it's got to deserve a lot. Yeah, guys, monorail's never going to happen again. That's another video I have as well. It's like, why monorails have failed. And it's not because of technology, because the monorail technology absolutely works. It just has a lot to do with the economics of it. It just doesn't make any sense, and there's not a lot of people that do monorail, so it makes no sense. Why do monorail when maglev is now becoming a heck of a lot more popular? It's a lot cheaper to go ahead and maintain. Countries like China and Japan have made maglev a heck of a lot cheaper, so it's basically monorail on steroids. That's what maglev is. Some good news for, bad. Let's start some bad news. Well, you can call it make some sense news on Amtrak, but we'll go some good news on Amtrak later on. Amtrak's gonna ban customers who refuse to wear face masks. So I'm sure you guys have seen some of the face masks and gas masks and all the other masks that I have. I mean, I'm stocked with masks and whatnot, and P95 filters and P100 filters. I got respirators. I got N95 filters and respirators. I mean, some people still refuse to wear masks. I mean, the good thing about masks is that you can be anonymous or whatnot, or you can look like a freak if you wear ones like these. This is a Polish surplus gas mask. I have an MSA Millennium. That's my favorite one. And I just wear it out at this, at some point, just to make, how ridiculous it is sometimes. But it's just to LARP and for the giggles. Someone's got a question on Brightline. Is it true that Brightline is going to extend to the port of Miami? Yes, they are, because I know that Richard Branson is going to be having out a cruise service out from the port of Miami. So they've already have tested, and we've seen some pictures of Brightline actually going across to the port of Miami and going into the port of Miami. So yeah, they would. Did you do a fit test? Yeah, I have done a fit test on them. Going ahead and making sure that it's closed in and whatnot. Yeah, great for looting, but I'm not going to be looting anything. I want people not to loot me. What do you think about direct airport to major train hub connections? Those are very good, especially here in the United States. I know in France they're popular for the TGV, and in Germany as well. It depends on some of the places. And some places here, like if you have some airports that are disconnected from where the actual city center is, like let's say for example Dallas-Fort Worth. Okay, the airport from there is a little bit of a ways outside of the city. So if you can have a railway connection over to there and charge just a service to go ahead and connect to the airport, that's a lot of other revenue added as well, and a lot more options for people to go ahead and make different connections. Like if they want to go from city center, or maybe if they want to go from a different city. Let's say if they want to go from Houston and they found cheaper tickets over in Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, they can go ahead and take the train over all the way up to the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport and go from there. Brightline, the FEC has some trackage over to the Port of Miami. Port of Miami is one of the biggest ports in the United States. There's a lot of freight that comes out of there, and the FEC is the main railroad that takes a lot of the freight from there. Again, a lot of that gets a different video. Shouldn't I just own one or two masks? Well, we have one or two masks. I mean, I have me and my girlfriend, so we have masks. We only have several N95s because, again, you have to throw some of them out when they get old. And we have filters because we don't know when this is going to go on, and the supply has gone up with it. But, I mean, that's what it is. Not hoarding it. That's for me. So, Amtrak is going to ban customers who refuse to wear face masks. And, again, a lot of these face masks, they've already said that some of them aren't even capable are really working to go ahead and stop coronavirus. Again, you have to have at least an N95 to actually stop the micron levels. I think it's like 0.03 microns, the size of the droplets that the virus attaches onto. So having a mask that's at least N95 has gaps that are small enough to 0.03 microns, something like that. So they are tightening face mask restrictions and requirements. Again, this is just now because of the rise of the coof in the States. So making sure that people are safe and actually feel safe when riding on Amtrak. Because a lot of it also, too, is security theater. It's understandable. But again, there's nothing that can hurt you if you wear a proper covering. You can wear a neck gaiter. I have a couple of neck gaiters as well for fishing and whatnot. I think neck gaiters are also cool. And again, at least have some sort of face covering on there to at least get on there, and at least for everybody else to calm down. Don't make a scene. It will be safe if you have it on as well. Not quite sure if the Canadian border is open for travel use, but I know everybody has basically banned us, which is fine. I'm not like I'm going anywhere now or anything like that. Not like anybody can afford to go on a trip unless you're part of the 1% or something like that, or the 2%. Or just wear a face shield too. That also works. So some good news on Amtrak. They're opening up the transportation hub in Newport News. That's pretty cool. Now I know I had some pictures on here, or maybe this article doesn't have pictures, but there's a cool picture of the rendering of that. Let me see if I can find that. There we are. So they're breaking ground on it too. That's the good thing. Yeah, talk. Let me get my 15 minutes of photo op and pretend I'm doing something for project that should have happened years ago. But this is what it looks like. This is pretty nice. Very similar to the architecture of the All Aboard Brightline Virgin. At this point, I'm just gonna stick with Virgin Brightline. Again, I think that name should stick and stay. I wouldn't call it Virgin Trains USA. I would stick with the Brightline moniker. But it has a very similar modern look. That's very nice, especially like this water feature over here. I don't know if that's actually a walkway that people can get on, but that's pretty cool. Again, a $47 million project, expected to run in 2 years, hopefully in the summer of 2022. So give it another year or so. Let's see how this works. The new transportation center will be located at Bland Boulevard between Warwick Boulevard and Interstate 64 and serve as a hub for Hampton Roads transit buses, taxis, shuttles that service the airport. It will also replace the Amtrak train station currently on Warwick Boulevard. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the memes and videos on some of the Amtrak stations, but some are just so old and some are just regular, like a bus stop that just says Amtrak on it in some places. I don't remember where that was. They do have a train station, but they've been going ahead and trying to renovate it for the longest of time. It's more now a multimodal center now, which is going to be good. And again, if you can be able to have more of a multimodal transportation, give people options. If you don't want to ride the train, that's fine. If you want to go ahead and use it to take the bus, there's more to it. Again, this is the whole point of transit-oriented development, to give people options to do not just the train, but whatever else they wanted to do. Okay? That's where other countries and other cities, like in Hong Kong, well, not Hong Kong now, but I mean, when I mean Hong Kong, you know what I mean. In Tokyo and, in Singapore and other places, why do these stations work? Why are there so many people? And especially in Europe, too. You see the same thing in Europe. They're not just train stations. They're centers of commerce. They're sometimes apartment buildings. They're office complexes. They're malls, in a sense. They also have retail spaces, etc. That's what they serve. They serve as points of commerce, not just a train station. Yeah, stick with Brightline for Florida, but Virgin Trains for Express West. So it's all under the Virgin Trains USA brand. But some brands will be able to sit like GM. You have it's GM, but you have Chevrolet, you have GMC, you have what used to be Pontiac and Saturn, the rest of them that GM killed. You have Buick. So again, that's kind of what it is. No, I don't have the video of the steam engine going down I-10. I probably should be getting more into steam engines, though. Speaking of, let's talk about what's going on over in Chicago over here, because this is just insane what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and put it up full screen so you guys can see a little bit of backstory to the Union Pacific North Line over here, or the UPN. So this was something that used to be owned by the Chicago and Milwaukee Railroad, and then was later by the Chicago Northwestern Railway, and then afterwards was over to the Chicago Northwestern Railway and to Union Pacific once the Chicago Northern folded up in 1995 and was bought up by Union Pacific. So for those of you who don't know, this is a rail line that runs, commuter rail line, heavy rail, that runs between Oakville and Kenosha, Wisconsin, connecting into Chicago. And from there, Union Pacific actually operates these Metro trains over here. So they're not they're Metro equipment. However, the train operators inside are actually Union Pacific employees. So Union Pacific has actually been operating this railway since 1995 on behalf of Chicago's Metro. So what's been going on apparently and unfortunately has been that it seems like Union Pacific does not want to run this railroad anymore. They don't want to run this commuter railroad. And of course, Union Pacific is one of the largest, I think if not the largest freight railroad operator in the United States, if not the world. But here's the thing, and you can see why they don't want to run this anymore. Union Pacific says that it's a money loss for them, it's a money sink, and ridership has been declining. Now, if this is in terms of, is it declining because there's less people in Chicago, or people moving out of Chicago, or people don't trust the railroad, or they don't trust the service, or they're driving instead? There's a whole lot of questions to this, but what it seems to be is that Union Pacific, most likely, it's a money loss for them. So that's why late last year, Union Pacific wants to stop running Metro lines. Ogilvy, yeah. That's what it is. Again, I'm not from Illinois. I don't know what half these towns are called. I mean, I'm here in Indianapolis, and I'm still trying to figure out why it is Carmel called Carmel and not Carmel. Like in California, because I've always heard Carmel is pronounced like that, but it's Carmel. Just boring old Carmel. But it's not boring. It's a pretty nice place. So let's go back to December of 2019. 2019. When the world was still kind of normal, in a sense. Union Pacific spokesperson Kristen South says that we are negotiating a union agreement that gives Metro direct responsibility for operating as commuter lines through a service transfer. So why is this? Union Pacific wants to focus more on freight. That's absolutely what it is. For reasons not made public, the issue is being tried in federal court. So this legal matter will not impact train service. So for those in Chicago right now, it is an essential service, so it's still running. But Union Pacific says if they're able to get the go-ahead from the federal courts, they're giving 90 days notice for Metro to go ahead and take the reins, and they're gonna fly out of there. Who owns Chicago's railroads? A lot of the railroads, some of them are owned by BNSF. Some are Union Pacific. Metro owns some of the lines, wholly owned by them, but a lot they're just going ahead and they're giving concessions over from BNSF and the freight railroads in order to run Metro. When will Chicago begin to grow again? When Chicago becomes an actual place that people can be able to afford, and people aren't getting shot left and right over there. That's the truth. That's what it is. A lot of people are moving out of Chicago, and they're invading, they're like a pestilence, invading places like Indianapolis, and they're bringing their politics with them. Poor us, But this is funny now. So after that, Metro says they didn't want to let go of Union Pacific. They said, no, Union Pacific, you keep running that railroad. We don't want to go ahead and renegotiate this. So Union Pacific's like, fine, we're going to sue you. Okay, let us go. We're going to sue you. So it's been sealed by the court, so we don't know exactly what all the details are of, why it's going on and how much really what they're going for. But this is funny. Union Pacific's desire to get out of the business of operating Metro commuter rails has landed in federal court. The exact nature of the dispute is unknown since the filing is sealed by Union Pacific's request. It's just getting weirder and weirder over here, right? Well, it can get even worse because now Metro is also suing Union Pacific. Welcome to America. You sue me, I sue you. That's exactly what it is. It's just crazy over here. So Metro wants a ruling that Union Pacific must continue all services and lines. I like how this author puts it, Greg Hines or Greg Hines. Again, sorry for the mispronunciations here. You can't sue me, I'm suing you. That's the latest in the legal war between Metro and Union Pacific Railroad over who will provide some service to commuters. And now, this was back in December, and now Metro is suing in this month of July. They're suing now Chicago. This is just getting weirder and weirder. I don't know where this even ends over here. So they're suing Metro in federal district court in December, federal district court in Illinois, over the terms of service. Because Union Pacific wants to get out. Okay, we'll go a little bit into why they want to get out. Maybe we can figure this out here. I have a couple tabs to be able to go ahead and look into here and kind of dig down as to why it is. Okay, how much money are they losing here? Why do they want to get out of it as quick as they can? Metro today struck back in a statement asserting that Union Pacific wants to degrade or halt commuter service. Metro says it's filed its own suit seeking to move control of the dispute from federal court to the U.S. Surface Transportation Board because that federal regulatory body has responsibility for railroad policy and expertise in the railroad industry. So they're going ahead and doubling up over here. So that's another article over here. The Metro's asking the STB, the Surface Transportation Board, for injunction against Union Pacific to maintain commuter service. And this is an ongoing thing right now. So we'll bring you the latest when it comes out. I'll probably take some bits of this and put it into a separate video for anybody that wants to go over here and look at this. Again, for those of you in the Chicago metro area, services have not been stopped. So if you have work or if you have anything else, it's still an essential service. It is still operating as of now. Worst case scenario, that if Union Pacific does win this court case, and probably the courts are already filled up at this point, that they probably won't get to it that soon, but this is being moved up, and Union Pacific has a lot of money. So this probably will be an in-demand case right now, a higher priority case. So again, worst case scenario, 90 days notice for Metro to go ahead and supply your own services and get your own train operators to go ahead and move your trains on our railroads. That's basically what's going on. Yes, that's exactly what they want to do, is transfer them over to Metro. How's it going, Pensy fan? Yeah, Detroit is one of those cities that does lack heavy commuter rail. And unfortunately, Detroit's one of those cities that it's going to take a lot of investment or, a complete turnaround for that city to come back, because people just don't want to go to that city. It's far too dangerous. A lot of companies don't see the worth of it anymore. I have been seeing some of the new Amtrak test cars. Wonder if they can bring them over here to Beech Grove. Since I'm down the street from there right now, I can be able to go ahead and see what's going on over in the Amtrak facility that we have here in Indianapolis. You do have a point, Highcast. Yeah, Metro, again, if you look at it from an outsider's point of view, yes, Metro should be owning and operating its own cars and its own train sets. However, this is just part of the deal that Union Pacific had with the Chicago Northwestern back many years ago in the 90s. I think if you guys remember Home Alone, the train where Kevin McAllister runs over the train line in the first Home Alone, that was actually the Northwestern, I think in Winnetka. That's how you pronounce it. Correct me if I'm wrong again. I'm not a Chicago native, and I don't want to live in Chicago. Please, I don't want to get shot. But this is, again, more just words saying what's going on. In response, Union Pacific acknowledged that it and Metro have differing interpretations of a common carrier duty. So maybe it has to do with, more of freight prioritization over passengers, and Union Pacific wants to go ahead and run more of its trains. That's probably not really the case, but Union Pacific wants to have more control in this, and that's understandable. Okay, they feel that it's been a losing deal for them ever since with Metro, and they don't want to have a part of it. So it makes perfect sense that they want to get out of there if they want to. Currently, UP operates Metro trains under a purchase of service agreement in which Metro provides the equipment and reimburses Union Pacific for operating that equipment using Union Pacific personnel. So we'll go ahead and look into that again. And again, there's more on this. We'll put the links in the description below right after the video. I'll go ahead and put that on there. If you guys want some more info, let me know, and I'll look more into this. But here's the thing. And there's more again. The Union Pacific is losing millions of dollars operating from Metro. It has to do about the money. That's really what it is. Millions of dollars in losses and incur millions in additional risk if forced to continue operating the commuter rail service for Metro. Now, I know this has a lot to do with what's going on with the COOF. That's really what it is. Because UP now is bracing for more of an impact now with the rise of infection cases in the U.S., which means that commerce is going to go down. The amount of goods and services, you're going to have a very erratic and sporadic amount of goods and services going on, goods going on the trains. But, I mean, this is just crazy because now they're, since businesses are shutting down again, they're going to lose a heck of a lot of money. And we got a 10K out of Union Pacific because every public company has to go ahead and publish out their 10K. It's part of a fiduciary requirement that they have to be able to do that for the investors and also for the SEC and the Securities Exchange Commission and everybody else to go ahead and see where the money's going, what they're planning, etc., etc. Okay, now, for any company, the biggest source of expenses comes from compensating your employees. Okay, paying your employees is the biggest expense in any company. Okay, it's not the equipment, it's not all that. Yes, those are big expenses at the beginning, but those amortize themselves over time. They pay themselves off over time. People, however, you got to train, you got to keep paying them over and over again. And yes, they do provide your service, they do run your trains. However, unlike the trains, you don't have to keep paying the trains. Okay? Yes, you have to fuel the trains, but you can keep fueling the trains. The trains are not going to drive themselves. Yet. I know we picked that up in a different video. But even if the trains did drive themselves, somebody's still got to be there to go ahead and monitor it. So compensation and benefits accounts for 34% of Union Pacific's 2019 operating expenses. What's Union Pacific doing over here? They're just operating these trains. So again, they're just putting up a whole ton of expenses. Now, it's true that Metro is going ahead and paying back, they are paying back Union Pacific. What was the term again that they called it over here? I know I had it here. There we are. There we are. PSAs, purchase of service carriers. Okay, so we got here, this is Metro Rail's own financial statement that we also have. So again, look at this. Operating revenues for Union Pacific, and this is millions of dollars, so $100 million, $135 million, okay? So it's not, billions or anything like that. It's still a lot of money. They make $135 million in passenger revenue. Okay, other revenue. That could be stuff like, other extras added on, or maybe they sell concessions or anything like that at the stations. I don't know, because I've never taken Metro. I've taken the CTA, but I haven't taken Metro, so, the Metro Heavy Rail, so I'm not quite sure what they have at the stations. So total operating revenues, you tally that up, that's $136 million. Now comes the operating expenses, okay? Transportation of the carriers, engineering, mechanical, administration expenses. Okay, that's total carrier level expenses of $205 million. So now you're at a loss of $69 million there already. So this is what Metro is paying. So they're already losing. Metro itself is losing money out of this. Okay, again, why they're paying so much out of total carrier expenses? Because diesel fuel, claims and insurance, downtown stations, that's all $30 million. So we're transportation, engineering, mechanical, administration, and even that, I'm surprised administration isn't even that high, because that's usually, sometimes too high for a lot of places. What accounts for transportation over here? That's a good question. What are the key terms and what is defined as transportation? That's what we got to know. Total in-kind expenses. So again, $99 million, over $100 million of losses that Metra is paying out to Union Pacific. So they got to pay on top of that. So that's insane. So yeah, we can definitely see why Union Pacific doesn't want to run this anymore. Metra is losing money on it. Union Pacific is losing money on top of the money that Metra is giving them. So they want out of this. That's perfectly fair for them. If you want to get out of a deal, you have to go to a court in order to get that. So, as bad as it may seem, as unfair as it seems to Metra, this is a perfectly valid point that Union Pacific has. That's what, in terms of a contract, they have an obligation in order to get out of it if they want to. So we'll see what the courts what the district courts are going to say, what the Surface Transportation Board is going to say, because this is just a complete mess of what's going on. See what's going on in the comments below. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I got that train poster. Actually, my girlfriend went ahead and gave it to me, that train poster. She got it, I think, from Hobby Lobby. So here's some good news. This picture will even load up. Amtrak is going back to Grand Rapids to Chicago. So we got some good news over there for Chicago. That the daily train service has been suspended since March 21st. So Grand Rapids, Michigan to Chicago, that service is coming back up. The Pierre Marquette Daily round trip service will start back up this week. The service has been suspended since March 21st when the coup first began. According to press release from Amtrak, the train will originate in Chicago on June 29th, and both trains, 370 and 371, will operate starting June the 30th. Okay? So I know this was back again, but, things are starting to come back again a little bit, and this was a month ago, but, again, this is good news for Chicago. Hopefully they don't take it away again, but with the mandatory masks in order to go ahead and ride on Amtrak, hopefully things won't disappear again. Again, if ridership decreases, then that's a whole different explanation. But they can't do it out of a safety purposes for riders. They're only doing it because they're not getting the amount of riders in order to go ahead and make money off of this. And Amtrak has just had a terrible time. Again, like I said in the last live stream, I really feel for Amtrak. They were going ahead and actually make an operating net positive this year. They're actually going to do it in the 40 close to 50 years that they've been around. Okay, they've almost been around for 50 years. 50 years, yeah. Next year will be 50 years. But they have not been able to make an operating profit since then. They were going to make it this year. They were on point to make it. And somebody sneezed and coughed in China, and that was the end of it. That's just unfortunate. Yeah, Amtrak will ban passengers without a mask. So, again, you can't ride, mask up, or can't ride. It's only fair, okay? It's only fair. If you don't want to, get a neck gaiter. They're easier to wear on. And half the time, people are wearing masks on the wrong way. I've seen people wearing masks where they're not even covering their nose. They have it like this. I mean, how dumb can you be? Just wear it on your nose, wear it on your mouth, as long as it covers your mouth, that's it. And also trim your beard, make sure that you have it so, it covers up everything. I wear a respirator, and I have it cut out so I can be able to wear it on in my little, tycoon, railroad tycoon mustache over here. Yeah, I heard about that too. I think that was in either in Sacramento or somewhere in California. That I think Homeland Security caught a defecting spy from the embassy or something like that. Since they're now trying to force the closing of all the Chinese embassies. We could head into a war, guys. I remember at the beginning of this year, I was saying that I'll see all my millennial and Zoomer friends over in Iran. But it seems like that's been postponed. It seems like we're going to Beijing. 55 days of Peking all over again. Maybe we'll have an 8-nation army. I don't know. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Climbing the walls of Beijing. Yeah, I know Fauci. Well, I think that's the thing. Like Fauci, just he's just all over the place, and that's the thing. He's had a taste for power now, and now he really wants to go ahead and say, we may be shut down for forever now. We never know. Again, I understand, coming from a medical perspective, I see where they're getting, but they're not economists. Fauci has a job that is going to pay him until he's dead. The rest of the world does not. Okay, the rest of the United States doesn't have a job like that. Millions of us are now unemployed, including myself. So I mean, it's hard. It's easy for someone like Fauci to go ahead and say the things he says and do the things that he does, but for the rest of everybody else, it's not. I know that sounds cliche, but it's the truth. He didn't wear the mask. He can't even pitch correctly. Doesn't take that long. So what is with the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority? Well, it seems like the Department of Transportation is going ahead and announcing a nearly $1 billion loan for the train project. Now, I mentioned last stream that there's a lot more opportunity now because a lot of senators and House representatives are trying to find ways to go ahead and boost the economy in their local municipalities, and infrastructure is one of the best ways to do it. If you can build a lot of infrastructure, even if the Treasury and the printers that are now going brrr right now, even if they were to explode, at least we have some railroads. At least we have some assets there that we can use and give on to the next generation. We'll just have to trade in berries and Bitcoin instead of U.S. dollars. But we'll figure that out at some point. Unfortunately, it's going to be our generation that's going to be left with the dole over here. But this is good. $851.15 million loan that the U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao is putting out for this New England project. The loan provided under the Railroad Rehabilitation Improvement Financing Program. And again, this, in a sense, I think there's a lot more going on in this administration now. Even with this going on, with the COOF going on, than the previous administration in terms of rail. There's a lot more movement going on. Now, it's fair to say that yes, the last administration the Obama administration did pave a way to at least start it up, but they didn't go forward enough. Okay, so a lot of private businesses and this administration has really gone ahead and just cranked that up. Not to 11, but they've cranked it up some more. Okay, it's what we got right now. The Mbta is the largest transit provider in New England and will be installing train control technology, so PTC, positive train control, to make sure that these trains don't go hurtling off the rails or smashing into each other. Because we've had enough news articles about that in the last decade about that enough already. PTC systems prevent trains from being routed through misaligned switches, protect trains from colliding with other trains, reduce derailments, just like I said. Also install ATC systems on the 170-mile north side commuter rail lines. It will expand the buried fiber optic cable network that covers the entire Mbta commuter rail signaling system. So that's very good. So again, that's setting up for in the future, if you do have self-driving trains or if you do have AI control, that's set up for there. If you have fiber optic, and it's enough to facilitate the amount of speed between a central command center or central control or central system, whatever you want to call it, and communicate with the trains, communicate with the switches, communicate with all the equipment back and forth at an amount of time in order to go ahead and facilitate these operations, timely, efficiency, and most importantly, safely. Yeah, I know it's true that Japan has enforced the lockdown. They don't. Well, in Tokyo, a lot of people do wear masks, and I was talking to this with Holly, my girlfriend. Saying why is it that when we see videos of Japan, why is there's so many women and people just wearing masks? A lot of it has to do with if they have a cold, they don't want anybody else to get sick, so it's out of respect for everybody else's health. A lot of times, girls and idols and whatnot, they don't want to put up makeup or they don't want to be, seen in public, so they'll wear a mask. And it's not, it's not like you're crazy or weird for wearing a mask in Tokyo. It's pretty common over there. But they haven't enforced any mask or anything like that because, the Japanese citizens are a lot more, let's put it this way, responsible than some American citizens. Let's put it that way. This stream, we're going to be ending in about a couple minutes. Well, we have one more article to go to, and then we'll be taking questions. So, we're almost done over here, guys. It's 9:54. Will the Mbta expand into New Hampshire? I don't know. I haven't seen any news about that, if they're going to expand to that or not. Again, this is more of a state project just for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. speaking of China, and I absolutely do agree with this, okay? Because here's the thing. I get that, a lot of people have noticed, and I will absolutely admit that I'm a lot more libertarian-minded. I'm a lot more follower of the Mises school and Austrian School of Economics, and having a lot more freedom and a lot less regulation where it makes sense. Again, we're not saying let's go ahead and have people's fingers cut off and put into Campbell's soup sandwiches so we can really have some chunky chicken noodle soup plus some fingers in there. Chicken fingers. Not chicken fingers, but chicken plus fingers. But that's what we don't want, okay? We want to have responsible business and responsible commerce. There's a difference between capitalism and corporatism. What we have here in the United States is what you can say fairly is a corporate oligarchy, okay? Where you have government and companies being hand in hand and making deals and whatnot to be able to lobby to have this concession for X company, like the airlines, while making sure that another company can't be able to enter into the space and having that sort of artificial barrier to entry into a market. Okay, that's not fair, that type of stuff. But other countries don't play by the same type of rules and the same type of morals that we do. As much as we want to push morals out there and make sure that everybody's moral, people are only human. And nations are going to look out for themselves. That's why I'm absolutely America first, okay? Not necessarily that, that Trump is. This is beyond Trump. America has to be first in whatever decisions that we make in terms of, politics in this country. This I absolutely agree with, that we should sanction and make sure that Chinese railroad company trains and rail sets and equipment do not come into the United States, because what they do is, and they've done this with a whole lot of other countries, like in Africa, like in Asia, like in Eastern Europe, they will undercut every other procure to go ahead and make sure they can have the cheapest procurement to go ahead and put countries into debt. They'll go ahead and promise all these cheap trains. They'll go ahead and put that in there. But when you look at these high interest loans they put on the deals in order to go ahead and have these countries to build these infrastructures, they basically buy out the entire country, like in Kenya or in other places like Boston, that I think they're also trying to buy CRRC trains if they have not already. But again, like I said, guys, closing the embassies, blocking off their their commerce from coming in. I guess the next thing is making sure they don't get oil and rubber until their planes start flying over us. Yes, and I do agree with that, Gramble. The only good business that's been done right with mutual respect is with Japan. And because the Japanese people have understood that about commerce and whatnot, they have at least a culture of private infrastructure there, of respect to other people as well, and respect to your customers, respect to yourselves, and respect to other people as well. That's part of the Japanese ethos. Does everybody in Japan follow it? Absolutely not, but they follow it a lot more than other places. Absolutely, and I do agree. Yep, we've done it with other countries. Yeah, I've seen a couple of Black Pigeon's videos. I haven't seen him in a long time, but I've caught up with a couple of his videos now. I just don't like his, they're kind of the same format over and over again, and they're kind of cringy to watch. But I mean, he does give good information. I just put the video at 2x speed so I can just hurry up and listen to it and get the information down. I do that for a whole bunch of videos. It took the two Dukes for them to be that way. Not necessarily, again, there's a whole history behind, why did we nuke the country twice or whatnot. Again, I could go on for it, but not on this stream. This is a rail channel, folks. This is a family-friendly rail channel. Okay? But we don't follow COPA, okay? We're not signing up for that. It's not made for children, but we're family-friendly. If your family's over 18, I guess. Or if you're mentally over 18, even though half of us aren't. Yes, and that's the other thing. A lot of these CRRC cars, they're made cheap. Again, this is just a way to be able to dump these products onto the market. This is market dumping. That what the Chinese railroad company is doing, CERC. So a U.S. rail lobbying firm is making sure to sanction these companies, make sure they don't come in. And I think it's true. If we can sanction Huawei products to not come into the United States, and for federal governments to not be able to use, cancer like TikTok, That's one app I have never gotten into, and I will never ever get into that. And I hope none of you are in TikTok. Please, dear God, Zoomers, please don't get into that stuff. It's just a stuff for for thoughts to go ahead and and strump it out themselves, and go take people to their OnlyFans account. Degenerate app. But if we can be able to ban people from the U.S. government from using Huawei devices, from using TikTok, because I know the Pentagon and some other agencies have banned their employees and government officials from using Chinese technology. Why would we allow China to go ahead and bring in for our infrastructure that is again one of the most critical parts of American society, where people travel on every day? Why would we trust the Chinese to go ahead and do that? And again, not when I mean the Chinese, I mean the Chinese government. Okay, you guys have enough common sense to know that. Okay, if I hear one thing about racism, I swear I'm gonna go ahead and punch you in the mouth. You guys know that. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Pensy fan. Absolutely. Yeah, India has been. I give props to India. As much jokes as we make about India and all that and whatnot, they do take care of India first. That's the good thing about India. If you're an Indian, Narendra Modi has taken as good care of Indians as possibly as he can. According to himself. Okay. Same thing with Xi Jinping, the premier of China. Okay. He has is taking care of China first. So we in America should be doing the same thing, okay? Not for other countries, especially a small country. You know what I'm talking about. But again, all these countries are taking care of themselves. We should be the same thing. Yeah, and the CCP, again, what they're doing to a lot of people, to Christians, especially to the Uyghurs, to Hong Kongers, to a whole lot of ethnic minorities there in China. They're trying to say that we do the same thing, but we don't do that, anyway. They're doing it on a scale that's, part of the country's ethos to do that. I do recommend you guys read Chairman Mao's Little Red Book, and, Das Kapital, and the Communist Manifesto, so you can get kind of a sense of what Marxism-Leninism and what they want to do, because what China has is Marxism-Leninism with Chinese characteristics. So, all the parts of communism that I like, plus, make it, for China as well. So, again, it's part of the ethos to go ahead and use other people to their will, make it look like and lie to other people as part of the Little Red Book. Again, after World War II, Mao went ahead and used the KMT to go ahead and take all these the U.S. equipment we gave to the KMT to go ahead and defeat Japan out of China. Once the KMT and Chiang Kai-shek's forces were tired out from all the fighting, Mao went ahead and defeated them and took the jeeps for himself. I mean, there's a lot of pictures with Chairman Mao out of an American-made jeep going ahead and giving speeches. So this is what they do. They go ahead and infect and subvert other countries to go ahead and get their will. That's what they do. Do you think China is benefiting from the coup? Yes, in a way, and no. Okay. And I know a lot of people, there's, again, the punishment from heaven or something like that, or mandate of heaven over in China, because I know I've gone through a lot of Chinese history and whatnot. A good channel you guys should watch, I've been watching them for like 10 years since like high school or whatnot, is China Uncensored. That's a really good channel. And hopefully they don't get banned from YouTube, because YouTube and Google are trying to see if they can edge the way into, getting into, China's good graces in order to go ahead and do that. I'm going really off the rails with this one, guys. You don't know how much it upsets me, man. It's just part of the Cuban heritage and absolute vehement hatred for communism. That's just what it is. You know what it is. Speaking of, I am trying to look to go ahead and bring these caps out. We're getting an order of shirts this week, finally. So those of you who have ordered shirts and have gone through our Patreon and have went ahead and put out for the shirts and caps, we're getting them out. So stay tuned on that. That's one thing we are focusing on that. How's Virail doing? I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked at any news on that. But this is good. Again, some bad things because they're cutting some projects, like in Austin, Texas. But again, they're just gonna have to figure out where else they can go ahead and get these train sets from. Transit agency Capital Metro is proposing a reduction to its Project Connect Rail and Bus plan that would cut the total cost of the package by $3 billion, a little more than a month after officials approved the ambitious $10 billion project. Okay, the Austin American-Statesman reports the changes would include a shorter version of the planned light rail orange line, while bus service would replace the planned light rail gold line. The new $7 billion plan, reflecting the financial impact of the COOF, is currently one only being offered as an option to the full plan approved by city officials in June. All right. No, that's not even related to that. This is just part of a news digest. I thought that had something to do with that, and maybe some of these, like the Mbta, which I think they were getting like CRC train sets or something like that. Again, CRC subsidiaries had plants in Chicago, Springfield, Massachusetts, and the company has built or is building equipment for the Chicago Transit Authority. There you go, Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, LA Metro, and the Southeast Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. Benty fan. You better be careful getting on those trains, man. They may just, collapse. All right. It's 10:05 now. We've gone through all our articles here, guys. We've had a good night. And let's see what other questions we have. Have you ever listened to Weird Al's Another One Rides the Bus? I've heard that a long time ago. I had to look at that again. Yeah, I like Weird Al's music. They're funny. I remember when White and Nerdy came out years ago. When is Tampa going to be connected by Virgin Tampa? That's going to take years. Right now, they're focusing on Orlando. Once they get Orlando done, I would probably expect maybe 2025 to Tampa or 2027. That's the time frame that makes sense to Tampa. Again, they have to get Orlando done first. Once Orlando rolls in, that's really the big moneymaker for All Aboard or Brightline. Yeah, meanwhile, the rolling stock in California HSR is transgender. That's a good one. Not Ruiz Railroad. Do you think China's reputation is broken from the COOF? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been broken for a long time, but this is just solidifying it. And a lot of countries, India is getting into physical spats between China. Look what they're doing now with Pakistan. That China's now is moving in more troops and more money into Pakistan, which is one of their allies. So you can already see sort of an axis powers over here by China. And again, a lot of people say, Russia's the big enemy here. Russia and China have never gotten along. They had when it was still the USSR. They had different versions of their own communism, of their own Marxism-Leninism, and what their interpretations were on it. So they never got along with that. And, for the thousands of years, they're, again, completely distinct, different peoples. And they've had, many wars of conquest between each other. So they don't like each other just, on the genetic aspect. But, on the political aspect, Russia and China have kind of been frenemies. That, they're kind of on the world stage together, but, if they had the chance to backstab one another, they would absolutely take it. And Russia's really much of a paper tiger. They're not really, their military personnel is a heck of a lot better than the Chinese military personnel, but they don't have near the numbers of China, nor our numbers in terms of a war. So I don't know where Russia would really stand on there. And again, they don't want to, compromise themselves on the world stage because they have a connection to Europe as well. So they don't want to go ahead and mess up their geopolitical connection to European politics as well and to commerce there. We must buy Greenland as a second Alaska. Why don't we just keep Alaska there? I think Alaska's fine. I don't know what's this whole thing with Greenland, why everybody wants to buy Greenland and where this meme actually came from. I just keep seeing it all over the place. Just keeps popping up on the catalog for some reason. China is an aging and dying society. Yes and no. Again, their one-child policy has completely screwed them over. But again, there's still a billion or so people. They still have a lot of money, a lot of power. What do you think of a railroad in Alberta, Canada that is planning to extend to Alaska? I know I've said a little bit about it in the beginning. I really think the big gripe is how can you be able to go ahead and what's the word? How do you go ahead and make sense of it, in a sense? Okay, man, I'm really at a loss for words for this one. I don't think it's the alcohol either, because I ain't even had half of this. It's really how. Where are you going to be able to get the money and revenue for that? How can you justify the ridership between Alberta and Alaska? Is there really that big of a demand between Alberta and Seward or Anchorage that people want to go up and down to? Maybe if there was more of a, depends. In Canada, the Canadian economy is also a mess too. I don't know if you've seen any of those memes on the prices in Canada. For food and whatnot, paying $50 for a steak or something like that. I don't know if all that is true or whatnot, or where in Canada that is. But, I mean, even Canadians, regular Canadians, native Canadians. Again, the Canadians that were there, from the British or the French or whatnot, they can't even afford anything in Vancouver because, the Chinese are buying up a whole lot of property in Vancouver and just driving up the prices. I say a lot about Miami prices or Los Angeles or San Francisco prices. But Vancouver, man, for a loft, $1 million for like a 1-bedroom or something like that, depending on where you are, that's insane. For freight, it would work, but again, can you justify the amount of freight that goes in between Alaska and Canada? Well, I didn't, my apologies. I didn't see if it was passenger freight. Again, if it's a freight railroad, if there's that much freight going in between Seward, in terms of ocean freight, if there's enough going between Alaska and Canada, again, that would make sense. But again, it's a very expensive project. And look, if you look again, the history of Alaska, and the Alaska Railroad, it took the government to go ahead, a whole ton of years and a whole ton of money to go ahead and build that, and it was a big money loss. Until many years later. Alright, hopefully you guys can hear me. I think OBS just had a little bit of an issue there. I don't know how much of that you got, but let me just reiterate that real quick. The whole construction for the Alaska Railroad took millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and trillions if you actually count it. Maybe not trillions if you count inflation, but definitely billions of dollars. Okay, close to something of the price for the California high-speed rail project. If it took that much to go ahead and build that, how much would it take to go ahead and build between that and Canada? Of course, you have to get permission through the Canadian government and their help on it as well, because it would be something through the Canadian railways. Yeah, again, I know, guys. Yeah, I went ahead and ordered for an Ethernet cable. It went to the wrong address, and then when I went down over to Columbus to go ahead and pick it up, it wasn't there. So I don't know. We do have a gigabit connection over here, so we're on fiber optic, so that's a good thing. So the stream is going to be a heck of a lot better now. Texas High-Speed Rail is doing pretty fine. Let's see what happens in the higher courts now with the appeal that's going on between the opponents of Texas Central Railway, because it is, yes, a railroad, and they can be able to use eminent domain. I don't know. That could be a good excuse, David Mitchell. If we're in a war with China, if we need to get stuff over to Alaska real fast in order to go ahead and bring equipment through the Pacific on that route in order to go ahead and circumvent the Central Pacific. If we want to go to the Northern Pacific, maybe that would go ahead and push the Army to go ahead and build the Army Corps of Civil Engineers to go ahead and build between Canada up to there, because Canada is an ally, so. The Canadian military and the United States military can go ahead and quickly build a railroad up through Canada. That would make sense. David Mitchell actually made a good point right here. He actually did. That's a good one. Again, if that scenario were to happen, that's the only scenario where I see that, yes, it's justified now. Let's go ahead and build up to Alaska. Because again, the Alaska Railroad did a heck of a lot of work during World War II. To the point that, of course, as in most wars, the government takes over the railroads, and then they beat the railroads to the ground because they're just transporting, heavy equipment after heavy equipment like tanks and, airplanes and parts like that, tons and tons of equipment. They're not just cars. There's, heavy tanks and whatnot. So that really beats on the ties. It beats on the rails. It beats on everything else in there. So once the private companies had it back after World War II, they had to go ahead and the private companies themselves had to pay out of their own pocket to go ahead and fix up these railroads. And then came the 50s and 60s, and the government wanted to go ahead and tax them to death to go ahead and build airports. So the railroads did not have a great time. Is there U.S. high-speed rail in southeast U.S. Atlanta to Charlotte? Virgin Brightline has been actually making plans to connect Atlanta to Charlotte. Is there anything specifically on set in stone right now with that? No, but they have been talks about that. That's absolutely true with the Vancouver area. Alright guys, let's take a couple more questions and let's end it over here. We've been streaming for about an hour, 20 minutes. We'll close this off at 10:20. How far does the Amtrak Vermonter go? I'm not quite sure. I don't have that up in my head right now. Let's go ahead and look that up, actually. Amtrak Vermonter. Let's bring up the route map. Alright. So it goes from St. Albans, Vermont to Washington, D.C. So that's 611 miles, Adam. If I don't have the answer, I'll find out. That's how I operate. I may not know now, but I'll find out. How bad in a scenario where China will do going full assault in Taiwan? That's what they were originally planning. Again, it's not a military channel, but I know at least enough on the subject to sort of say where that's going. And again, tensions have been going up pretty far in there. We actually almost went to nuclear war with China several times in the 1950s, if you guys look up on the Taiwan Straits crisis. And even still to this day, China has thousands and thousands of missiles and batteries pointed at Taiwan on their shores. So if they have been threatening to go ahead and take Taiwan because they still claim that Taiwan is theirs. Again, real quick history. There's two Chinas. There's the People's Republic of China, the PRC, or Red China, and there's the Republic of China, or Blue China, aka Taiwan, which we recognize until Nixon went ahead and messed us up and went ahead and recognized Red China as China. So again, technically there's two Chinas, but Tsai Ing-wen, who's the current president of Taiwan, is trying to get away from the whole China thing and say, no, we're not China, we're Taiwan, which is, absolutely good on their end to separate themselves from that. But again, China's not going to let that go. And I mean China, I mean, Red China. And during the Korean War, absolutely, yeah. If you guys have heard of the human wave, those poor Marines, what they had to suffer through. Yeah, there's also many islands that Taiwan claims, not just the island of Formosa, which is the main island that the Portuguese have, hence why it's called Formosa when it was there. But there's many other small islands, just like Japan. Japan is a whole network of islands. Of course, you have the four main islands, but you also have a small network of islands all over the place. That's right, Ruiz Railroad. Yep. there's a whole lot of information on that. And again, we're not a military channel. And I know I read a lot on military history and whatnot. I just don't want to go into that because we'll just go off topic on there. Maybe I'll talk about it on my other channel if I ever get to, live streaming or doing anything on my other channel because I'm being a dummy about it. Think any company has thought of developing lines in less populated areas, kind of like what many railways did with the homesteaders in the early 20th century. Yeah, like Alaska railroads, having railroads in less populated areas, again, unless there's a lot of resources to be gotten from there and a lot of people and there's a lot of demand for people to move over there, maybe it makes sense. Next live stream, we're going to be doing weekly live streams. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video that came out. I know it's not my video, it's a PBS video. But I was looking, other videos on, YouTube or in the public domain that I can put out there. Like we did with the video on the Fox on the Florida Overland Express that we got from Gene Skoropowski, who was one of the original directors of the Fox, and then he worked on Brightline. He let me borrow that VHS, and I said, well, this VHS isn't anywhere on the internet. We have to put it out so other people can see, what high-speed rail would have looked like in Florida if this project were to actually go on. So that was pretty cool. We found that out and put that up there. Do you think the U.S. and Russia would be allies against China? If Russia gets a good concession out of it, maybe. It could be like another Boxer Rebellion again. Having everybody united against China, which was the only time the world was united for anything. Good times. Alright, guys. I think we're going to call it a night there. Thank you for watching it, Darius. I'm glad you enjoyed that little video. Again, we'll come out with more videos as well. If you guys have any videos that you have on VHS or DVD, let me know or something like that. That if it's not online, we can go ahead and put it up there. Or if it's maybe not up to quality, or maybe there's certain parts or whatnot that are just scattered around there, we'll go ahead and put it up on our archive system. Yeah, I do think I'm siding 60% to Russia siding with the U.S. Thank you, Stalking Horse. You do a better job at this than me. Like that smash button. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell for more content. There you go. That's the cliche YouTuber. All right, everyone. Thank you for writing. We have arrived at our stop. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend. We will see you soon. Keep up with updates from us. I'm going to be getting more involved with Discord right now. Not too much on Facebook. And then we'll try to get more onto Twitter as well as Medium. So we may be looking for writers soon enough to go ahead and post on Medium. So we can have some sort of a blog and some articles coming up and really make this American Rail Club into a real robust, top-tier rail club to actually advocate and bring world-class transportation to the United States. And watch your step as you get off. Yes, please safely keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs to your person. And have your mask on. All right, guys. Take care.